I wasn't supposed to see that message. It lit up on Ryan Kessler's phone when he stood up from the table to take a call. The screen flickered briefly under the soft golden lights of Skyview Terrace, an upscale restaurant in Seattle. I didn't mean to look. Honestly, I was just pushing my wine glass aside to avoid spilling it. But the text appeared, clear as day. Let him close the deal, then cut him. The sender was Victor Lang, the new CEO of Nexlify, the company I'd given 20 years to. Those words burned quietly, searing into my mind. I blinked, but they didn't vanish. My hand froze mid-air, the wine glass nearly slipping. Across the table, James Harper, COO Vantage Solutions, was laughing and chatting with his CFO, completely oblivious. They had no idea. For 9 months, Ethan Caldwell, 47 years old, had poured my heart into getting them to this negotiation table. A $42.3 million AI contract. One of the biggest deals in Nexlify's history. I built it all, every clause, every contingency, every number.
Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the latest video.
I straightened up, forcing myself to stay calm as Ryan returned. He flashed that polished smile, the one that never reached his eyes. But I caught a flicker of tension, a sharp, fleeting glance. He knew I'd seen the message. I smiled back, slow and smooth. Let the game begin, I thought. The dinner went on like a scripted play. My mind was elsewhere. Skyview Terrace shimmered with golden lights, reflecting off crystal glasses and silver cutlery, overlooking the twinkling Puget Sound in Seattle's night. But I no longer saw its beauty. I watched Ryan closer. He sat straighter than usual, checking his phone often, fingers trembling slightly with each notification. He laughed offbeat when James shared a tech industry anecdote. His facade held, but it was fragile, like brittle glass. James and the Vantage team were warm, inspiring. Ethan, your leadership on this project has been extraordinary, James said, raising his glass. Honestly, if you ran the whole company, we'd have signed this deal months ago. Before I could respond, the waiter approached, pouring more wine. He looked at me, smiling too eagerly. Always a pleasure serving the CEO and his team. An innocent remark, but I saw Ryan's hand tighten around his glass, knuckles whitening. His jaw clenched, just for a moment. But it said everything. They didn't just want to fire me. They wanted me to hand them the contract first, so they could claim the glory. The laughter around the table grew distant, like echoes from a hallway I no longer belonged to. The scent of grilled seafood, the aroma of aged wine, the golden lights, all faded under the weight of the truth. I smiled, but this time not for James, not for Ryan. That smile was for me. I felt the crack. The value of this contract was my achievement. The one who sacrificed countless late nights, weekends, and cross-time zone flights to make it real. I wasn't just an employee. I was its architect, and they planned to discard me like an outdated tool. At 47, I'd seen enough power games in tech to spot a bad actor. Ryan, with his perfectly tailored suit and rehearsed smile, was a product of handshakes and empty promises. He didn't build this contract. He didn't stay up late crafting strategies, or fly across 3 time zones to win clients. But here he was, chosen by Victor Lang to replace me. I wasn't angry. I was tired of the 20 years of injustice at Nexlify, the promotions I was denied, the projects I led, but others took credit for. I thought of Laura, my wife, who always asked, "Do they see your worth, Ethan?" I thought of Jacob, my 16-year-old son, the kid dreaming of MIT, where I studied. I'd sacrificed so much startup dreams, family vacations, full nights of sleep, to build Nexlify. And now, they meant to erase me from the picture after I painted it. The dinner dragged on, but I wasn't there. I nodded on cue, smiled when needed, but my mind was far away. I thought of my years at Nexlify, the times I swallowed bitterness as Ryan or others got promoted over me. I thought of this contract, my brainchild, and how they wanted to steal it, but I wasn't someone easily defeated. At 47, I'd learned failure isn't losing. It's not getting back up. As dinner ended, James shook my hand, promising to review the final contract tomorrow morning. "Ethan, you're the soul of this project," he said. I nodded, pride mingling with bitterness. Ryan clapped my shoulder, saying, "Great job, Ethan." But his voice was strained, like he knew I held something he couldn't touch. I looked him in the eye, said nothing, just smiled. Stepping out of Skyview Terrace, Seattle's cold air hit my face, carrying the briny scent of Puget Sound. I didn't look back. A plan was forming in my mind, not yet clear, but certain. They thought they could erase me from the picture after I drew it. They were wrong. The game had begun, and this time, I'd write the rules. The wine from dinner lingered on my tongue, but its sweetness had faded as I stepped into my downtown Seattle apartment. The city lights outside my window, once a source of inspiration, now looked cold, distant. I shrugged off my coat, letting it fall over the chair's back, and stood still before the large glass pane, staring at the Puget Sound skyline. Tonight, everything changed. Victor Lang's message, let him close the deal, then cut him, wasn't just a statement. It was a knife, tearing through my 20 years of dedication to Nexlify. Memories flooded back, not in pieces, but like a torrent. The first time was 3 years ago, when I negotiated a $10 million contract with a financial conglomerate. I did nearly everything alone, while my director was on leave. The leadership's congratulatory email came, full of praise. Outstanding work, Ethan. You've exceeded expectations. But when the promotion list was announced, my name wasn't on it. Instead, it was Ryan Kessler, a 6-month Nexlify newbie, who wasn't even there when I flew to Chicago to pitch the deal. I swallowed the insult, kept working, thinking opportunity would come. The second time was an AI integration project for a logistics company. A contract I built from scratch. When it was done, HR called it a strategic need to keep me in my role. Ryan, my subordinate then, called it a pause. I nodded, pretending to agree, but deep down I knew they just wanted me as a machine churning out results. Nothing more. The third time, just 6 months ago, I prepared thoroughly, updated my portfolio, gathered recommendation letters, even mentored 2 young employees to prove my leadership. But the announcement email came, and nothing, no explanation. Later, through whispered hallway talks, I heard the leadership thought me too rigid, too independent. A man who didn't lean on others, it turned out, was harder to control. My phone buzzed, snapping me back to reality. Laura's name lit up the screen. I let it ring twice before answering, forcing a cheerful tone. Hey hon. Laura's voice came through, warm but laced with worry. Sweetheart, just checking in. You sounded exhausted the other day. I'm fine, I lied, staring at my reflection in the glass. My eyes were hollow, like a stranger's. Really? She pressed gently. You're working too hard. I just want them to see it. To see you. I hesitated, then smiled, knowing she couldn't see. They value me, but the truth stung behind my teeth. I turned from the glass, my eyes stinging more than I expected. I blinked fast, trying to stop uninvited tears. A soft ping sounded from the laptop on the table. I leaned down to check. An email from Sophie Tran, my assistant. No subject, just an attachment and a line. You didn't get this from me. I clicked. It was a PDF titled, Q4 Restructuring Plan. Confidential. My name was nowhere in any leadership track, not even as a potential candidate. But Ryan's name was everywhere. New team lead, strategic director, East Coast expansion. I stared at the document, feeling something rise in my throat. So that's what they thought of me. A tool, a temporary thing, someone who builds bridges but never gets to cross them. I closed the file, sitting in silence. For the first time in years, I let myself feel unfiltered. The bitterness, it seeped into my bones, cold as a Seattle winter. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't stay long. Not this time. At 47, I'd learned bitterness could be fuel, if you knew how to use it. I stood, walked to the window, and looked down at the city. The lights twinkled, like opportunities I'd missed. I thought of Laura, who believed in me more than I believed in myself. I thought of Jacob, my son growing up in a world I wanted to model for. The Vantage Solutions contract, my brainchild, was still in my hands. They could take my title, my office, but not my knowledge, my relationships, or the trust I'd built. A thought sparked. I didn't need Nexlify to prove my worth. I'd done it 1,000 times. In every clause, every negotiation, every handshake, Victor Lang's message wasn't the end. It was the start of something bigger. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, feeling Seattle's air shift. A storm was coming, and this time, I'd be the one steering it. 2 months ago, James Harper, COO Vantage Solutions, texted to ask if I had time for a private meeting. It wasn't unusual. James preferred discussing work outside stuffy boardrooms, where everyone's glued to their phones. I thought it'd be a routine talk about delivery timelines, or AI specs. But that day, at Pioneer Brew, a small coffee shop in Pioneer Square, Seattle, the cafe had white brick walls, reclaimed wood tables, and the soft clink of cutlery. The aroma of roasted coffee mingled with Seattle's damp air. James arrived 5 minutes early. As always, in a rolled-up shirt, no suit, no tie, just casual enough to put you at ease. But never sloppy. He smiled as he sat across from me. "Thanks for making time, Ethan." "Always," I replied, sipping my coffee. "As long as it keeps this contract moving." But when the coffee arrived, I sensed something different. James didn't check his phone, or pull out documents, just sipped his espresso, and looked at me, like he was reading something unspoken. Then he leaned in, voice lowering. "Ethan, can I ask you something personal?" I blinked, caught off guard. "Sure," he shrugged. "Why are you still there?" "At Nexlify." I paused, not sure I heard right. "What do you mean?" James took another sip of espresso, his eyes never leaving mine. "I've seen your work. Your strategies are sharp as a scalpel. Your risk models are elegant. Honestly, I checked some documents your team sent. Ryan Kessler's name was on them. But the structure, the thinking, that wasn't his. It was yours." James's words hit an old wound, the bitterness from years of being overlooked at Nexlify. I kept my voice steady. "That's how the team works. Shared credit." James didn't flinch. "You're better than sharing credit." I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt seen, another part skeptical. James stirred his espresso, then continued, his voice soft but firm. "Look, I'm not trying to meddle in your career, but if you're tired of being undervalued, if you ever build something of your own." He paused, his eyes locking onto mine. "We'll invest." The offer hung between us. Direct, unembellished, sincere. I gave a small laugh, to ease the tension. "That's a generous assumption." "I don't make assumptions," James said, his voice firmer. "Especially when I've rejected contracts from people less competent than you." His words stopped me cold. "What do you mean?" James leaned back in his chair. "We turned down a contract led by Ryan last year. It looked flashy on the surface. But dig deeper, and there were conflicts of interest, vague performance commitments, messy vendor ties. When we asked for clarity, he just dodged." My stomach twisted. Nexlify had called that deal almost successful. "No one told me Vantage pulled out because of Ryan." James softened his tone. "I'm saying this because I believe in people who build the right way. You do, and that's rare." The waiter passed by. Neither of us had touched our food. I smiled, trying to seem calm, but my mind was reeling. That conversation should have meant nothing. Just words over espresso. But now, sitting in my dark apartment after dinner at Skyview Terrace, it was everything. James saw what Nexlify refused to acknowledge. And I couldn't stop wondering, if I built something of my own, what would it look like? Not theory, but reality. That night, after reading Sophie Tran's secret email, the restructuring plan cutting me out of every leadership track, something in me shifted. I didn't tell anyone, not Laura, not friends, not even Sophie. I just started researching, late at night in my quiet apartment, when the city's noise had faded, when office politics couldn't touch me. I read about legal structures, tax frameworks, business licenses. I skimmed regulatory articles like bedtime reading, marking what I didn't understand. I wasn't building a pipe dream. I was drafting a blueprint. That question, what if I could do it, never left me. It grew in the dark, in silence, and sometimes, in secret. I looked out the window, Seattle's lights twinkling, like possibilities I'd missed. But this time, I wouldn't let them slip away. I thought of Laura, of Jacob, of the $42.3 million contract I'd poured sweat and heart into. Nexlify could take my title, but they couldn't take what I'd built. And deep down, I knew the seed of freedom had been planted. Now it was time for it to grow. After that meeting with James Harper at Pioneer Brew, something in me had changed. The question, what if I could do it? From that night never left me. It took root deep in my chest, growing in the dark. But I didn't rush. I'd learned that bold moves need a solid foundation. I was drafting a blueprint, every line careful, every step deliberate. The $42.3 million Vantage Solutions contract, my brainchild, was still within reach. And I wouldn't let them steal this achievement. A week later, I walked into David Nguyen's law office in downtown Seattle. David had worked at Nexlify, but left 2 years ago, fed up with the leadership's selective ethics. His office was simple but serious, with shelves of legal texts, and a small family photo on the desk. David, glasses slipping down his nose, looked at me as I sat down. "What do you want, Ethan?" "Something discreet." "Not just discreet," I replied. Voice even. "I want it clean. No strings leading back to Nexlify. And I want it to be mine." David nodded. A short, sharp smile. "All right, we can do that." We spent the next 2 hours mapping out the strategy. David filed to establish Cedar Path LLC, named after the tree-lined street near my house, where I used to jog to clear my head. The company name was neutral, untraceable, unless someone really dug. Next was the bank account. I opened it at a local credit union, under Cedar Path's name. No flashy logo, no staff, no leased office, just an account number, a file and a password only I knew. It wasn't a real company yet. I wasn't reckless, I didn't transfer company data, or whisper ideas in Nexlify's hallways. If I did this, I'd do it legally, leaving no gaps. But I hadn't counted on Sophie. She caught me one late night in Nexlify's server room, standing alone, staring at export logs, like they were written in Morse code. Sophie crossed her arms, tilting her head. "You're not really checking backup logs for fun, are you?" I flinched, turning. "Just late night admin cleanup." She raised an eyebrow. "That's the worst lie you've ever told." I didn't answer, just gave a faint smile, and closed the computer window. Sophie hesitated, then stepped closer, voice low. "Whatever you're doing, I want in. Unless you tell me not to." A long silence stretched between us. I could have brushed her off, but Sophie's eyes, steady, loyal, fearless, made me exhale. I pulled a small USB drive from my pocket, handing it to her. "No names, no details," I said. "Just my strategies, clean versions, no proprietary docs, no signatures." Sophie took it without hesitation. "Give me 2 hours." And she delivered, just as promised. That night, while most of Nexlify's office was scrolling social media, or picking dinner, Sophie quietly copied everything I'd created over the past 18 months. Strategies, risk models, budget scenarios, all mine, original, clean. We didn't talk much as she worked. When she finished, she handed me the USB, and said, "It's on a clean partition. No metadata. You're safe." I nodded. "Thanks, Sophie." She paused before leaving. "Whatever you're building, it's already stronger than what they think they own." When the door closed, I sat in the dark, the USB cold in my palm. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't rebellion. It was preparation. A plan I didn't know I needed, until now. I stood, walked to the window, and looked down at Seattle. The lights twinkled, like promises I'd missed. But this time, I wouldn't let them slip away. Cedar Path LLC wasn't just a name. It was the door I opened, in the dark, to step into the light. I'd never felt prouder, a pride that didn't need applause. It was quiet, living in the satisfaction of knowing I'd built something others thought I couldn't. I sat in Nexlify's dimly lit meeting room. Everyone else long gone, but I stayed. The Vantage Solutions contract, worth $42.3 million, was nearly complete. I'd fine-tuned every detail, Pricing confidentiality, clauses delivery standards, data security, every note, every line, bore my mark. Ethan Caldwell's. No legal assistant, no ghostwriter. This contract didn't come from a team. It came from me. Past 7 p.m., my inbox pinged. An email from James Harper, COO Vantage Solutions. Final review done. Everything's clean on our end. Ready when you're ready. I leaned back, hands clasped under my chin, rereading the words. Ready when you're ready. They hit differently tonight. This was the contract that could define a career. The kind that turns employees into directors, directors into legends. Footsteps echoed in the hallway before the meeting room door opened. Ryan walked in, tie loosened, smile overly rehearsed. There's the hero, he said, clapping lightly. Closed it yet? I looked up, keeping my face neutral. James just confirmed. They're ready to sign. Of course, Ryan said, stepping beside me, pretending to scan the contract on my screen. You did great, Ethan. Really, his voice was smooth, but I caught the strain at the edges. A week ago, I might have mistaken it for sincerity, but not now. I nodded politely. Thanks. Ryan lingered a second too long, patted my shoulder, then turned away. Let's make history, he said. As the door closed, I exhaled, moving my cursor to the send for signature button. It paused, just a second. A voice inside, one I'd tried to silence, whispered, "Wait." The meeting room door creaked open minutes later. Sophie Tran poked her head in, eyes tense. She whispered, stepping inside and closing the door. I tilted my head. Everything okay? Sophie came closer, voice low. You haven't sent the contract, right? Not yet. Why? She glanced at the glass wall, then at me. I overheard HR. They're talking about a restructuring announcement and layoffs. I frowned. Nothing new at quarter's end. Ethan, Sophie said, voice firmer. I heard your name. My stomach twisted, but I kept my face calm. You sure? Not entirely, she admitted. But I trust my source. They said wait till next week to finalize. I got it instantly. If I sent the contract tonight, Nexlify would have their prize and no reason to keep me. I closed the document, shut the laptop. Thanks, Sophie, I said softly. Holding off for now. She nodded, slipping out quietly. I stood in the dim light, arms crossed, a deep pride spreading, not from titles or promotions. For the first time, I didn't need their title. I had leverage. I had clients, and they had no idea what I was about to do with both. The next morning, everything started as usual, until it didn't. I walked into Nexlify's lobby, holding my stainless steel coffee mug like I had every day for 20 years. The security guard nodded. The elevator dinged familiarly, but the hallway air felt off, a stifling stillness. At my desk, I saw the meeting room door ajar. Inside, Ryan and two senior managers hunched over his laptop. Their voices hushed as I passed. A bad feeling crept in. I powered on my computer. The login screen flickered, then froze. I re-entered my credentials, but got a red alert. Access denied. I frowned, reaching for my phone to call it, but an HR email notification popped up. Status update. I clicked, and my world tilted. Your employment at Nexlify is terminated effective immediately. Access credentials have been disabled. Please do not attempt to access company systems. HR will contact you to finalize separation procedures. 5 lines. No greeting. No signature. I reread it, hoping it was a glitch, a prank, a phishing scam. But my employee badge stopped working. I realized when I tried opening the secure drive on my desk, and the card reader flashed red. Slack logged out. Emails vanished. My calendar wiped clean. I sat motionless for a minute, hearing only the soft buzz of the ceiling lights. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. They cut you. Just found out. I'm done. I'm quitting. I'm not standing here smiling while they erase you. Another text followed from Min, a young employee I'd mentored. Saw the HR system update. They reassigned your project to Ryan. No mention of you. The truth sank in. Not just fired. They were trying to erase me entirely. My mark on the contract, 9 months of work, my leadership, my legacy, all buried. Ryan wasn't surprised when I saw him in the hallway 10 minutes later. He just gave an awkward smile, saying, "Hope things work out for you." Not a goodbye. It was a performance. Back at my desk one last time, I found a small envelope on my chair. No label, no name, just sealed shut. I glanced around, no one noticed. I opened it. Inside was a black USB drive and a handwritten note from Sophie. "You'll need this. Everything you built." My throat tightened. I didn't know whether to cry, yell, or laugh. I'd spent 20 years building trust at Nexlify, sacrificing weekends, holidays, sleep. I came in early, left late, hit every target they set, and in 1 minute, 5 email lines, they erased me. But Sophie didn't forget. She remembered. She saved what mattered. I slipped the USB into my pocket, looking around the office one last time. The MIT diploma on the wall, the shelf of tech magazines, the empty chair where clients once sat asking me questions. Ryan could never answer, and in that moment, something in me broke. Not anger, but clarity. I wasn't leaving empty-handed. They fired me, but I still had relationships. Knowledge. As I stepped out of the building, Seattle's icy air slapped my face, like a second awakening. I didn't look back. I knew this wasn't the end. This was the moment they made their biggest mistake, and all I had to do was stay silent, let it unfold. That night, my apartment was stiflingly silent. No keyboard clicks from the laptop, no Slack notifications, no meeting alerts on my phone, just stillness. I sat curled on the sofa, the only light coming from the open laptop before me. On the screen was the contract. My contract. The one I'd built for nearly a year. The one Vantage Solutions confirmed, was ready to sign just 24 hours ago. But now, it felt like a dangerous object, emitting a flickering light that made me hesitate. I hovered the cursor over the file name. Vantage_AI_infra_final.pdf. My finger lingered over the delete key. I'd thought I was stronger than this. I'd set up Cedar Path LLC, prepared a clean exit, had Sophie and David behind me. But I wasn't ready for the shame of being discarded by Nexlify, without explanation, without thanks, without a trace of what I'd given. Sophie's USB sat on the coffee table, like a lifeline I wasn't sure I deserved. I stared at the blinking cursor, thinking, delete it, end it, start over. But then my phone buzzed. Laura. I almost let it ring to voicemail, but something in me cracked. I answered, trying to sound calm. "Hey Aunt, hey sweetheart." Laura's voice was gentle but sharp, like she sensed something. "You okay?" "Yeah, just a long day." I lied, staring at my reflection in the glass. Laura paused for a second. "I know your long day voice. What happened?" My eyes stung, but I blinked fast. "Nothing, just company mess, you know." A long beat of silence. Then she asked, something I didn't expect. "Do you want me to come over?" That question, simple, sincere, hit me harder than any betrayal from Nexlify. Laura was in the suburbs, a 2-hour drive, with aching joints from arthritis, rarely driving at night. But she was ready, no hesitation. "No on," I whispered. "I'm okay, just need to get through tonight. Tomorrow will be better." She didn't argue, just said, "You don't have to be better, just be honest with yourself." I choked, managing only, "I love you." "I love you too," she replied. "More than any contract, Ethan. More than any job." When I hung up, I set the phone down and broke. My body shook with sobs I'd held back all day. Grief, shame, anger, all crashing out like a breaking wave. When it passed, I sat there, hugging my knees, feeling small for the first time in years. But then, a notification flickered on the laptop, pulling me back. An unopened email, sent 2 months ago, from James Harper, subject, "You know your worth." I clicked, "Ethan, I don't know how this contract will turn out, but I want you to know this. We work with dozens of companies, dozens of teams. You're the first to make us feel our vision matters as much as the money. You're not just a project lead. You're a builder, a strategist. If you want to do something different, bigger, your way, call me. We'll back you without hesitation. James." I sat frozen, rereading the email. Tears still wet, but something in me stirred. It wasn't just words, it was timing. James had seen my worth long before the contract, before the firing email, before the shame. He saw something worth investing in, and I'd almost deleted it. I looked at the USB, then the framed photo of Laura and Jacob on the shelf, both beaming on my MIT graduation day. "You know your worth," I whispered, like a fragile mantra, just enough to make me believe. I didn't delete the file. Instead, I renamed it, cedarpath_signature_ready.pdf. Then I closed the laptop, not because I was giving up, but because for the first time in 24 hours, I knew exactly what to do. Tomorrow wasn't just a new day, it would be my first day. The next morning, James's email came, 3 minutes after I sent the contract under Cedar Path LLC. "We're in. And yes, the investment offer still stands. You did it right. We'll announce jointly on Friday. Congrats, Ethan." I stared at the screen, holding my breath. Then without thinking, I smiled. Not radiant, not triumphant, just quiet, focused. Behind that email was everything I'd fought to believe again. That my work had value, that integrity could win, that I didn't need to play by others' rules to build something better. A second email from James's team followed. "Please provide banking details for invoice processing. First payment within 24 hours. 24 hours. Nexlify, the company that fired me by email, was about to see $42.3 million flow to the man they erased. I sank onto the sofa, hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the feeling of control returning, piece by piece. I texted Sophie, no subject. "It's done. You saved more than you know." She replied instantly, "It's chaos here. Ryan hasn't left his office, but I'm laughing." I exhaled, texting back, "Wait a week. Then let me know if you want to build something real. No pressure, just an open door." I opened the laptop, moved the signed Cedar Path contract to a new folder, named Success from Trust. I didn't celebrate, didn't pour wine, didn't tell Laura yet. There'd be time for all that. For now, I just needed to sit with this feeling. The new weight, the new direction, the risk I'd just taken, and the fire it would ignite. I'd signed the biggest contract in the company's history. Only it wasn't their company anymore. It was mine. When you're right, you don't need to shout. You just show up with the truth, and let the silence do the rest. The lawsuit letter arrived one morning. Courier delivered to my downtown Seattle apartment. A thick envelope, heavy paper, bearing Nexlify's letterhead with a faint legal watermark. Inside was a formal notice. Demand for litigation regarding unauthorized client interference and breach of exclusivity agreement. I didn't read it all. I didn't need to. They were suing me for outmaneuvering them legally, for saving my own work, for refusing to sign a contract they never offered to keep. I slid the letter across the coffee table to David Nguyen, my lawyer, in a shared workspace in downtown Seattle. David, glasses slipping down his nose, took a second sip of espresso, skimming the document with a dry smile. Unimpressed. "They're really doing this?" I asked, almost laughing. David shrugged. "Of course. This isn't about winning. It's about intimidation." I leaned back in my chair. "They want a spectacle. They're losing control." David nodded, tapping the letter. "You took their biggest client, their best strategist, and 4 long-term accounts, all legally. They're panicking." He flipped to the last page, chuckling. "Look who signed this." I leaned forward. Matthew Lee, Nexlify's newly promoted in-house counsel. I'd met him once at a conference. Young, polished, sharp, but maybe too young. David laughed harder, leaning back. He was my intern, back when I wore cheap suits and wrote contracts by hand. "You serious?" I asked. "Dead serious," David replied. "I taught him everything he knows. Shame it's not everything I know." He folded the letter, tucking it back into the envelope. "I'll draft a response today. You'll never have to step into a courtroom." "That confident?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. David grinned. "Ethan, you weren't even officially an employee. No non-compete clause. No intellectual property agreement. They classified you as a contractor, to avoid full benefits. Remember?" I nodded. I remembered all too well. Every time I asked about a formal role, They said, under review, or not yet. They liked my flexibility, my ability to work without paid leave. They kept me dangling for years, useful but disposable. Now that same tactic, what they thought would save costs, would bury their lawsuit. David continued, we'll counter with your initial onboarding email contractor terms and latest tax filings. One round of response, and they'll back off. He stood, adjusting his blazer. And just to be safe, I'll CC the State Bar's Ethics Committee. I blinked. You think it'll go that far? David smirked. No, but it'll make Matthew sweat. I left the meeting, stepping onto Seattle's streets. The air was frigid, carrying the briny scent of Puget Sound, but today it didn't chill me. I felt the power of the truth, something Nexlify never had. They thought a lawsuit letter would make me flinch, but they didn't know how prepared I was, with David and Sophie behind me, with clients like James Harper trusting me. That afternoon, David sent me the draft response. It was sharp, cold and steely in the right way. He ended with a line I hadn't expected but instantly loved. My client will not be intimidated by a company that refused to acknowledge his value, on paper or otherwise. I read it 3 times, letting it sink in. No need for revenge, no need for rage, just truth and dignity. I forwarded the email to Sophie, with a note. They picked the wrong lawyer to fight. She replied instantly, they picked the wrong person to fight. I smiled, relief spreading. Sophie was still at Nexlify, but I knew she'd leave soon. She deserved a place that valued talent, like Cedar Path LLC. Meanwhile, Nexlify tried spreading rumors in the industry, hinting I'd stolen the Vantage contract. But they didn't anticipate the client's response. James Harper called me right after hearing the rumors, his voice calm but firm. Ethan, we signed with you because of you, not Nexlify. Don't let that nonsense distract you. Marissa Klein from Veltic Systems text. We're considering moving our account to Cedar Path, not because of rumors, but because you're trustworthy. Those words, brief as they were the recognition Nexlify never gave me. I thought of Laura and Jacob, of the times I wondered if I was risking too much. But now, with the Vantage contract in hand, with clients behind me, I knew I was right. At 47, I didn't need a title or Nexlify's permission to prove my worth. The truth did that for me. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Not because Nexlify backed off. They hadn't yet, but I knew they'd lose. I slept well because I didn't need to shout to be heard. This time, the law was on my side. And finally, so was the truth. I used to think victory was loud, full of spotlights and applause. But at 47, I realized true victory is the feeling of standing in a new office, watching my small team work, knowing it all started from a choice no one saw. Cedar Path LLC, the company I built from the ashes of betrayal, is now a name in the tech industry. From an empty bank account and Sophie Tran's USB drive, we've reached a valuation 3 times Nexlify's. With a new office in downtown Seattle, glass doors overlooking Puget Sound, and a whiteboard full of ideas, I stand in this space, city lights twinkling outside, and think about my journey. The $42.3 million Vantage Solutions contract wasn't just a turning point. It was a declaration that I didn't need Nexlify to define my worth. James Harper, Marissa Klein and Amir Patel, clients who chose me over Nexlify, are now Cedar Path partners, building new AI projects with us. Sophie, who left Nexlify right after the lawsuit, now leads our tech team, her eyes shining with the same conviction I saw in that server room years ago. I was once invited to speak at a tech conference in San Francisco, where executives younger than me competed to talk about innovation. I stood on stage, no flash, just telling my story, not of victory, but of rising. When the stage lights dimmed, a reporter from Tech Pulse Weekly asked, "What kept you going?" I smiled, my family, and the truth. Back in Seattle, I celebrated my way dinner with Laura and Jacob. Laura, with her gentle smile, held my hand under candlelight. "You redrew our future," she said, eyes sparkling. Jacob, now a bit taller than me, laughed loud, recounting how he bragged to friends that my dad owns his own company. Those moments, my son's laughter, my wife's hand, were worth more than any contract. On Cedar Path's office wall, I hung a small frame, not a plaque or award. Inside is a printout of Victor Lang's message. Let him close the deal, then cut him. No one understands why I keep it, but I don't need them to. It's a reminder from betrayal. I built a legacy. Each time I see it, I'm reminded how far I've come. Not for revenge, but to prove what I always knew. I'm strong enough to rise, without anyone's permission. I walk to the window, gazing at Seattle's skyline. The lights twinkle, like possibilities I once missed, now made real. Cedar Path isn't just a company. It's proof that at 47 you can start over and win. I breathe deeply, feeling a freedom that needs no declaration, and know this is just the beginning. The story of Ethan Caldwell and I was fired by text. While closing a historic deal, so I signed it under my own company, reflects the pressures and opportunities in today's competitive U.S. workplace, especially in tech. Ethan, a 47-year-old strategist at Nexlify, faces betrayal when fired just before closing a $42.3 million AI contract with Vantage Solutions. From the moment he spots Victor Lang's message, let him close the deal, then cut him at Skyview Terrace, to quietly founding Cedar Path LLC, with help from Sophie Tran and David Nguyen, Ethan turns adversity into opportunity. His journey, from a dark Seattle apartment to a new office overlooking Puget Sound, shows resilience, ethics, and belief in self-worth. His emotional talk with Laura, Jacob's support, and the framed firing message in the office are specific details, highlighting the power of family and self-respect. The lesson is that in the U.S. workplace, where corporate culture sometimes values results over people, you must actively protect your worth. Ethan didn't wait for Nexlify to recognize him. He seized opportunity by preparing legally and leveraging his relationship with James Harper. This reminds us that in a society prizing individualism, you need a trusted network and shouldn't fear restarting, even at 47. Learn from Ethan. Stay ethical like he did by refusing revenge. Trust family like he leaned on Laura, and turn failure into legacy. Like the framed message in Cedar Path's office, life in the U.S. rewards those who rise, not with words, but with action. Subscribe to the channel to follow journeys of building legacies from adversity like Ethan Caldwell's. Thank you for joining us, and see you in the next video with more inspiring stories.